It is strange how a story once carried by thunder can suddenly lose its voice. And that is exactly what unfolded when the 1974 Ford Mustang II stepped into the light. Instead of charging forward with the proud stance of its predecessors, it arrived on the modest bones of a Pinto platform, as if a wild horse had been pressed into the shape of a city commuter it never wished to become. Beneath the hood, the heartbeat that once shook highways now felt subdued. The base power plant was a 140 cubic inch inline-4, joined only by a 171 cubic inch V6 that tried its best but never captured the spirit of the open road. The design told the same story. Its soft, shrouded headlights carried a weary look, more like a gentle house pet than a Mustang running free across open fields. Gone was the sweeping fastback silhouette, replaced by a hatchback form that felt more like a practical family errand runner than an American performance icon. And yet the times gave it room to survive. With fuel shortages tightening the nation's grip, this smaller Mustang found sales even as it lost its soul. It became a reminder that even legends can wander off their path. If you enjoy revisiting these forgotten chapters of American muscle history, stick with American Muscle Soul and ride along for the next story waiting just down the road. And as the troubled Mustang II faded from view, the next chapter showed just how uncertain those years were for American muscle icons. The Mercury Cougar, once a polished and confident grand tourer, returned in a form that felt strangely unfamiliar, as if the cat had forgotten how to walk with pride. The 1980 to 1982 Cougar rode on the compact Fox platform, shaved down until its graceful lines became sharp corners. Its body carried an awkward geometry, more like a hasty sketch made by a restless child than the flowing design language of earlier generations. A puffed vinyl roof sat heavily on top, the windows shrank into narrow slits, and stripes drifted along the sides with no real purpose. Oversized bumpers that did not quite belong completed the uneasy picture, as though each piece came from a different car entirely. Under the hood, the story did not improve. A 140 cubic inch inline-4 tried to move the weight with little enthusiasm, while the 200 cubic inch inline-6 felt only slightly more willing. Even the optional 255 cubic inch V8 could not restore the lost confidence. The car seemed to sigh every time the key turned, burdened by styling choices that slowed both its pace and its spirit. Later refinements softened a few edges, but the soul of the Cougar had already slipped away. This generation marked the moment when a proud feline stopped prowling and merely padded along. If you have ever seen this odd Cougar in person, leave a 9 in the comments, and if you have not, leave a 0. And after the uncertain stride of the downsized Cougar, the next chapter reveals what happens when bold design takes a turn a little too far from familiar ground. The 1962 Dodge Dart arrived as a mid-size contender, yet its styling looked as if several competing ideas had been stitched together without a final decision. The fenders swelled in oversized ridges, the headlights were set low and heavy, while the tail lamps climbed high toward the roofline, creating an odd imbalance from front to back. The grille only heightened the confusion, carrying the expression of an experiment that should never have left the drawing table. Underneath, Dodge offered everything from the dependable 225 cubic inch slant 6 to the fierce 413 cubic inch max wedge V8, an engine capable of delivering serious performance in its hottest form. On paper, the Dart seemed ready to satisfy everyone from the cautious commuter to the weekend racer. But buyers never warmed to the unusual shape. Production dropped sharply from the prior year, and the styling quickly became the subject of jokes and puzzled glances. Critics called it strange, awkward, even unsettling, and Dodge took the message to heart. By 1963, the Dart returned as a smaller and far more conventional compact aimed directly at the Ford Falcon and the Chevy Nova. The one-year-only 1962 model was left behind as a reminder that daring design needs direction, not chaos. And after the bewildering lines of the 1962 Dart, the story takes an even stranger turn, as though the road itself, suddenly bent into a shape no one expected. That bend arrived in the form of the AMC Gremlin, a car that looked as if someone took an AMC Hornet, drew a breath, and then sliced away the rear before anyone could protest. What remained was a silhouette so abrupt that it felt more like a half-finished thought than a finished automobile. Its name came from the old folklore of troublesome creatures that sneak into machines to break them, and in a way the shape fit the legend. The shortened body sat atop a sedan frame, giving the car a stance that many buyers saw as clumsy and improvised. The rear sloped sharply, creating a profile that earned comparisons to everything from a cut-down sedan to a skater carrying too much weight on the wrong end. It was the kind of design that made people stop and stare, unsure whether to laugh or cringe. Yet beneath that odd form, AMC tried to give the Gremlin some honest heart. Engines ranged from the 199 cubic inch inline-six to the 258 cubic inch version, and for a brief moment buyers could order a 304 cubic inch V8 that put a surprising punch under the stubby hood. Inside, the cabin offered more space than expected, and the cargo area held its own. But for most onlookers, the crude styling was impossible to ignore. Shock and disbelief became the common reaction, turning the Gremlin into one of the most debated faces in American automotive history. And as the odd little Gremlin fades in the rearview mirror, the journey turns toward a name that once echoed with pure American mischief. Yet in 1975, the Roadrunner returned in a form that felt tired, heavy, and strangely disconnected from the rebel spirit that once made it a hero of the streets. Built on the bulky Fury coupe platform, the car carried the weight of a sedan's compromise rather than the sharp instincts of a true performance machine. The lines were plain, almost apologetic, as if the sheet metal knew it could no longer claim the swagger that defined the glory years. Under the hood, the struggle was even clearer. Emissions rules and a nationwide fuel crisis pressed hard against the once mighty heart of the Roadrunner. The base 318 cubic inch V8 barely managed 145 horsepower, and the optional 400 cubic inch engine, once capable of stirring real excitement, now breathed out a modest 235 horses. The car moved, but it no longer sang. Loyal fans felt the loss deeply. The Roadrunner had been the champion of cheap speed, the machine that brought laughter and grit to every stoplight. But this version was different. It felt like a memory slowed down, a once bright flame dimmed by the times. If you are still riding along with me at this point, drop a 5 in the comments so I know you are staying with the legends, even when they stumble. And after watching the 1975 Roadrunner lose its fire, the path ahead leads to a machine that surrendered not just its strength, but its very identity. The 1978 Dodge Challenger carried a name forged in smoke and thunder, yet the car itself felt like an echo sent from somewhere far away, thin and fading before it reached the ground. This second chapter of the Challenger story was not born in Detroit grit but arrived as a rebadged Mitsubishi coupe, smaller and lighter in ways that stripped it of the confidence the original once wore so naturally. Beneath the hood lived engines that told the same uneasy tale. A modest 97 cubic inch four-cylinder and a slightly larger 159 cubic inch version produced between 77 and just over 100 horsepower. Numbers like that could barely stir a breeze in a car wearing the Challenger name, let alone summon the spirit of the old V8 brutes that once ruled the nighttime streets. Its styling carried the same quiet retreat. A notchback roofline replaced the bold fastback curve of the first generation, and the squared headlights sat without much intention, neither fierce nor inviting. Inside, plaid upholstery and a plain dashboard made the cabin feel more like an economy commuter than a descendant of true muscle. For fans who remembered the mighty original, this version felt like a borrowed costume, a nameplate placed on a car that did not understand the legacy it was meant to uphold. It arrived softly and disappeared just as quietly, a Challenger in title only, forgotten almost as soon as it appeared on the showroom floor. And as the faint shadow of the rebadged Challenger drifts behind us, the next chapter shows how even good intentions can spiral into something strangely unforgettable. The 1986 Pontiac Grand Prix 2+2 was meant to claw back speed on the high banks of NASCAR, a homologation special built with purpose. Yet the moment it rolled into daylight, it seemed to wear its ambitions in all the wrong places. To cut drag and calm the air at racing speeds, Pontiac shaped a great curved rear window that wrapped across the back of the car. On paper, it promised control and stability. In reality, it made the Grand Prix look swollen, as if the body had expanded overnight and the frame simply went along with it. The plastic nose, designed to slip more cleanly through the wind, sat awkwardly against the squared shoulders of the body, neither matching the lines nor the spirit of the car beneath it. Under the hood lived a 305 cubic inch V8 with roughly 165 horses, a gentle push at a time when rivals carried far more authority. The car moved, but never with the conviction its racing heritage demanded. Its performance felt as uneasy as its appearance. Buyers sensed the mismatch instantly. Only a little over 1,200 units found homes, leaving the 2+2 as one of Pontiac's most puzzling creations, a machine built for speed, but remembered mostly for its whale-like silhouette and its lonely place in muscle car history. And as the strange, wind-chasing lines of the Grand Prix 2+2 fade into memory, the road ahead brings us to a car that had all the strength it needed under the hood, yet stumbled when it came to winning hearts. The 1999 Chevrolet Camaro carried the bones of the fourth generation, a shape introduced back in 1993, and by the time this version arrived, the design felt like a record that had been played one time too many. Up front, the Camaro wore a narrow pair of grille openings and small headlights that never quite managed to carve a presence on the road. It felt generic, as if the face had forgotten how to claim attention. The rear told the same unsteady story, with a wide taillight bar and a towering spoiler that cluttered the view rather than sharpening it. Optional appearance packages tried to stir excitement, but the extra scoops and add-ons often looked mismatched, as if each belonged to a different idea of what the Camaro should be. Inside, the mood sank even further. The cabin felt tight, dark, and inexpensive, with visibility that made every lane change a small act of faith. The seating position and ergonomics added to the sense that function had been sacrificed in the rush to keep performance numbers high and sticker prices low. The engine could still deliver a thrill, especially in the Z28 and SS trims, but personality matters. And in a decade filled with louder, flashier rivals, the 1999 Camaro felt muted, a strong performer wrapped in a shell that never quite remembered how to shine. And after the muted presence of the 1999 Camaro, the journey brings us to a machine that struggled even harder to carve out an identity. The mid-1970s Chevrolet Monza arrived as General Motors' attempt to chase the shrinking pony car market, built on the compact H-body platform shared with the Vega. It was small and tidy, but also strangely unsure of itself. The front end carried a narrow grille and simple round headlights that offered no real personality. The rear design tried to compensate with dramatic sail panels and a sharply cut tail, yet the effect felt clumsy rather than athletic. Inside, the cabin was bare and budget-minded, with thin materials and minimal ornamentation. Under the hood, the Monza delivered modest power. The 140 cubic inch four-cylinder struggled to provide energy, while optional engines such as the 196 and 231 cubic inch V6, along with a mild 262 cubic inch V8, offered only modest performance. The suspension felt stiff without being genuinely sporty, leaving the car caught awkwardly between economy car duty and performance car aspirations. In the end, the Monza never found a clear voice. It lacked the looks to stand out and the capability to excite drivers. It passed quietly through the decade, remembered mostly for what it tried to imitate rather than for anything it accomplished on its own. And moving past the uncertain footing of the Monza, the road bends once again toward a machine that tried to summon history with a name far heavier than the car beneath it. The 1979 AMC Spirit AMX carried the storied badge that once belonged to a wild, two-seat bruiser, yet this later chapter felt more like a quiet echo than a return to glory. AMC built the Spirit AMX on the compact frame of the Hornet line, shaping it into a liftback with a few bold stripes and sporty details meant to stir memories of its legendary ancestor. But beneath the surface, the numbers spoke with a softer voice. The 258 cubic inch inline-six delivered a little over 100 horsepower, enough for motion but far from mischief. The optional 304 cubic inch V8 added only a bit more than 125 horses, and the quarter-mile drifted into the mid-17-second range. Top speed barely nudged past 100 miles per hour, a far cry from the muscle-bound swagger the AMX name once commanded. Inside, the cabin told the same modest tale. Thin seats, plain materials, and a dashboard shaped by budget rather than ambition made the interior feel closer to a thrifty commuter than a performance machine. The upright proportions and compact stance gave the Spirit AMX an earnest, almost hopeful look, as if the car wished to be more than it was. In the end, it became a reminder that legacy is not something that can be worn like a decal. The nameplate evoked thunder, but the car whispered, leaving the Spirit AMX as one of the gentler, more forgettable turns in the long and winding story of American muscle. In the end, these 10 machines remind us how even the boldest traditions can stumble. Each one carries a lesson about changing times, tough decisions, and the risks that shaped American performance history. If you enjoyed this ride through the stranger side of muscle, tap that like button and share your thoughts below. And for more stories from the heart of American muscle soul, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next chapter.